Welcome to the Wild Billions breakout session. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, my name's Kate Golden. I'm the digital editor at Bay Nature. Bay Nature is a magazine. That we cover nature in the Bay Area. So we are dedicated to, it's a really unusual environmental nonprofit journalism organization. We're nonpartisan, we fact check our journalism, and we're really specifically focused on the Bay Area, which is unusual. We put out a quarterly print magazine, which I shoved under here. This is our latest one. What looks like a portal through time is actually a pipe with little baby kelp growing on it, which we'll talk about later. And you should all subscribe. And we have a newsletter, so baynatureorg.subscribe. Now, what we're going to talk about today is a bit of a departure for Bay Nature. We have been a magazine that really covers everything from sort of deeply reported features on why is there so much, how can we fix the megafire problem in California, to like, why are there so many spiders in my backyard right now? And what we're doing now is we're putting a lot of resources into trying to understand this phenomenon of the gigantic amount of federal money that has started to flow for nature nationwide, but we're looking at it with our Bay Area focus. So, BIL and IRA, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, and the Inflation Reduction Act add up to about $1 trillion in spending total. I should have put, I think that's my draft slide there, but it's about $500 billion for the Inflation Reduction Act as well. It's hard to tell because some of it's tax credits. We're specifically focused on the federal spending programs. I like to think of BIL and IRA, could not really have more boring names as two like cranes that just follow me around all the time. BIL and IRA was not really on Bay Nature's radar, as it was not on many people's radar, as a thing that we should care about, because when it passed, when BIL passed in 2021, it was really marketed as a green energy thing, which it is, and a jobs thing, which it is, and an infrastructure thing, which it is. Electric vehicles, tax revenue. But what we started hearing, and there was actually a moment where my editor was at this party, and these national climate activists were saying, this is the money that we have been waiting for a generation to see for climate change. And this is going to really dramatically transform our landscapes. And so we started to look at what is this? Like what's in these bills that is so exciting for nature? And what could it mean for the Bay Area? And my job, so I'm an investigative reporter by training, mostly spend a lot of time doing data-driven investigations. So my first instinct is just to go on a data hunt and try to figure out, so what's actually in this bill? What are the numbers? When I started to do this, it's just like the most confusing process. Like, how do you sort through $1 trillion worth of federal spending and make it, and try and understand like what that means on the ground in a small place? You look at like other organizations, mostly like big consultancies or advocacy organizations, had done some breakdowns of what's in these bills. Those organizations, by and large, have a very different focus to what we as Bay Nature and you guys have. Like, we have an interest in our landscapes and the nature around us. These guys are interested in the green energy stuff. So, we're talking about, for IRA, this is a McKinsey one. This is the environment box. And then, what do we have here? Water infrastructure. There's the water infrastructure, and then there's resiliency. There's a blue one up there. But the fact is, there's a lot more to it. So the other place that we started looking for information And what I'm doing here is I'm trying to give you a tour behind the scenes of how we get information at Bay Nature as journalists and what we're trying to do here. This is oh wait, I advanced it here and not there. There we go. I briefly forgot which computer I was working with. So there are these guidebooks that the White House puts out. You can read through them to figure out what's in these bills. It's about 650 pages if you want to read through it. It's not, it's pretty difficult to get an idea of the summary of things, you know. There's no like tables that say we're going to spend this much on X. And the other thing that's interesting about these guidebooks is there's some really big promises in these bills about reaching, about helping underserved communities, about achieving environmental justice. And these are words that I have never seen from a US administration before. So normally, as an investigative journalist, I find all this data, or I start looking for data, and at the same time I'm looking for human sources. Specifically, I'm looking for somebody who can give me that 30,000-foot view of what this all means. I'm looking for my Virgil, who's going to hold my hand as I go through the underworld of federal funding. And
this classics major really appreciates that reference.
Well,
I totally did not expect to hear anything about Virgil today.
Oh, okay. Well, it was going to be Beatrice, who's actually the guide to heaven, to paradise, but then I realized the underworld was kind of more appropriate analogy. I'm still going on a data hunt. So the problem is when I started talking to various sources, so people who lead large organizations that are in charge of large amounts of restoration and things like that, they have their own little views, but there isn't really anybody who had the big picture view, who could tell me about not just what this could mean for shoreline restoration, but what it could mean for wildfire risk reduction and what it could mean for all of the other ways, like climate smart, like agriculture, drought resilience, and all the other ways that we need to respond to climate change with the landscape. So I keep looking for data. I find some. The White House has put out a data set. And we start reading through it. That's really just how this work goes. Line by line, this is each one of these lines in the data is a program, is a federal spending program. There's information about the program eligibility, what the program is for. It's like a line this big, it's like a paragraph at most. So you get the sense you start to get the sense of what's in here, and we're going, oh my God, there's so much money in here for nature. And I started adding it up. We started talking. People were just saying, like, this is historic money. This is a freaking game changer. That pursuing these funds, this is somebody from the California Natural Resources Agency, Sarah Aminzadat. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right, but that this is going to make a huge difference in our region. But that there are huge concerns that come with that about how we use this money. This money could be transformational, but there are big problems to spending this money because it has to be spent so quickly, and because there are all these challenges to ramping up programs so quickly. So people were overwhelmed, finding that they were just like off to the races and trying to figure out where is this money, and here's what the data said about it. So we kind of went through and started just doing a super rough, do we care about this, do we not care about this, in that data set that I told you about? Just yes or no, or maybe. And we're interested really in nature-based solutions, restoring ecosystems, wildfire, not firefighting so much, but prevention, reducing flood risks, sea level rise, making communities more resilient, and really addressing environmental justice. Those are the things that are core of what we're interested in. That was spread, that there was about $106 billion. Most of those programs are nationwide, so we don't know how much is going to come to the Bay Area. Some of them are block grants, a few of them are block grants, or like formula spending. And they go to like 19 different agencies or bureaus. So if you're an organization that wants to get your hands on some of this money, you're looking at just this like spread of organizations. You might be, like most organizations that do the kind of restoration that we're interested in are more used to working with the state. They're more like focused on state. Is that how, do others find this to be the case? Like state money is usually where it's at. So this is kind of unusual. A lot of people don't really know how to apply for federal funding. And like there's no one-stop shop to find this money. So when we started looking at the programs and visualizing them, just like these are, so here is what we care about, and all the light grays like the green energy and the electric vehicle I just bought and stuff like that. These are the main agencies that are getting money. And of course, bureaus within these agencies are all like little fiefdoms that all have their own ways of doing things, their own ways of announcing things. There is no one place to go. There is, climate money in FEMA right now is doing prevention money. And here's some of the programs from, on our website, you can see these visualizations in an interactive way. But what we're trying to just give you a sense of is how many agencies, how many different types of programs there are, that it is this dizzying array. So we started this reporting project that's going to be going over the next couple of years while the money is being spent. We call it Wild Billions. We're looking at how is this money going to transform our region. If it truly is transformational, what does transformation mean? Will these bills live up to the huge promises that come with them? And what are the obstacles? What is the friction in the way to doing all that? That's what we're looking at. So this is a long-term project. We're a tiny organization, so we've got 2 editors, 2 young reporters, and then I hire freelancers as well. There's only so much we can do, which is why we keep our focus narrow. This is we're an organization that has always had a nonprofit, lens, but we take a kind of solutions orientation to our journalism. We try to be useful. So instead of just pointing out problems, we also try to point out solutions. We don't advocate for those solutions, but we try to point to them. We're data-driven, and we are focused on Bay Area nature. So in this project, that actually leads us to look a little bit farther out than we normally do. This is some of the data we're tracking, some of the awards that we're tracking. Partly because our water systems are so connected, so we look at climate-smart agriculture and issues in the Central Valley, for instance, and native plant restorations there as well. And because smoke travels, we're covering wildfire money in pretty much all of Northern California. And of course, we've all experienced that in the recent past, that the smoke does travel. So just to go back for a second, you'll find this at baynature.org/wildbillions. And we're doing a mix of, we're trying to profile as many projects as we can of where the money actually goes. This is just like a solid follow the money project. And we're not, though we do have an investigative bent, we are not just trying to find problems, we're trying to show the whole of like successes, failures, just like kind of just describe where the money goes and what it does. And we're also trying to produce explainers and guides. We just did one that's like, what's a nature-based solution? Because, it wasn't until actually a month into this project that I realized that was the word to describe what I was most interested in. I'm new at this. And then, of course, because we're data-driven and we want to visualize things, there's lots of maps and data there. And on the site, I'll just point this out. How do I get some wild billions? We'll talk about that in a bit. Wild thousands, at least. So I'm tracking this through news announcements from agencies. Google alerts are really our bread and butter. And here's a little bit of what we have been able to find so far, some of the big ones. So it's $3 billion for coastal resilience through NOAA, $24 billion for drought resilience and climate-smart agriculture, largely through the NRCS and the USDA, $19 million to, at long last, send some of that sweet bay sediment into those languishing bay wetlands, $200 million to upgrade Presidio's sewer and water infrastructure, thanks to Nancy Pelosi. $450 million for NorCal wildfire risks. And then these are two of them, probably the most important for folks in this room if you're, it seems like all the Creek's friends are here. The San Francisco Bay Water Quality Improvement Program has gotten a big boost. A lot of its money is intended for environmental justice related projects, and they're trying really hard to get small organizations money, and they know that there are huge barriers to that, especially for organizations that lack capacity and grant writers, and are not used to navigating those federal systems. So they're trying really hard to have webinars and be accessible and help people apply. So when I just talked to Louisa Valiella, who runs that program, about a month ago, and she was saying that they have really struggled to get high quality applications for that program and would love to see more. So I'll just put that out there. And there's a huge boost to EPA's environmental justice program nationally. It is growing by more than an order of magnitude. They are hiring as fast as they can. And I think there's a lot of challenges with how that works, but it's another place to look for projects that serve your communities. So I wanted to put a close-up on the Costa County projects that we've found so far. Not a huge number, but there are some. Is anybody here involved in these? Pittsburgh trees, Walnut Creek city trees, Wildcat Creek, Carquina Strait fish testing, and other lots of multi-benefit project, and a Ferry Point pier removal, just getting some nasty creosote out of the bay. Okay, so the project profiles that we're doing. So we're trying to look at a broad swath of the types of projects that are being done with this money in our area. So the cover story of our last issue, which you should definitely subscribe to, this looks this might be this is definitely the pinkest cover we've ever done. It might be the only pink cover, actually. Anyway, the point about this is it's a $9 million project that's trying to restore the kelp forests off California's off the Sonoma coast, and that project is a big gamble. The researchers do not want us to call it a Hail Mary, but we'll call it a bold gamble. Because the kelp forests are in big trouble. And then we have some projects that really just needed some money, and everybody knew what needed to be done. So being able to send that sediment to the Montezuma wetlands and a few other places that the Army, some of this BIL money is now paying to cover the difference in how much sediment costs from the lowest cost disposal option to the slightly more costly option of making use out of it. I think that the range of projects really includes things that it's not just like the shiny projects that are like innovative and new and experimental, but like stuff that just needed to happen for a long time. And the agencies seem to be pretty aware of that. So we are just doing lots of stories about that, and here's one about a creek daylighting project in Sausalito. I don't know if anybody's heard of this, but it's a half a mile or like quarter mile or something like that. Daylighting project where a school is actually getting money to do stewardship, which is kind of a new thing for the EPA. And it might seem like small potatoes for what the EPA would normally fund, but because this small project brought so many different benefits, like they were really trying to go for the underserved community stuff and the educational outreach and all that, it really kind of fit the bill for them, and it allowed the project to rank more highly than it would have in previous years. So we are, as we cover these projects and follow the money, beginning to learn about the obstacles and see whether the concerns people had as they, when we started reporting on the project, when the money wasn't really flowing yet, whether those are really coming to pass. And I'll just go through these. The first one is that even though this is a lot of money, we apparently a lot more money is actually needed. So they were talking about a one-shot deal, but everybody knows that what we really need is stewardship, and stewardship is not sexy and just needs ongoing funding, right? The upkeep, the danger of upkeep, as Jen Toy was talking about in her talk. So that's a thing. There's a shortage, various shortages of the things that we need or the people we need to get this work done quickly, because you're trying to scale up a lot of similar work quickly. So we see shortages, for instances, of skilled workers for restorations. We also see some solutions where people are figuring out how to hire local farm workers and folks from their community and train them. So there are definitely solutions there. We hear a lot that relationship building for environmental justice just takes time, and these grants are supposed to spend money really quickly, and that's a problem. I honestly don't exactly know how the EPA's environmental justice team is going to deal with this sort of shot of huge money, and we'll just have to see what happens with that. Because what they're trying to do is ramp up and create a lot of relationships quickly. Small organizations, underserved communities, there's no end to the challenges of that they have in trying to do a lot with volunteers and underpaid staffers and not enough staff. So that's an existing problem. And yet at the same time, what agencies told us is that often the small projects, especially in urban areas, have a really outsized impact, and that they are looking for those kinds of organizations to fund. So they're looking for ways to fund them creatively, often through funding pass-through organizations that will work with the smaller orgs in their area. Reporting and requirements, that's all part of the package of what makes federal money difficult. The agencies themselves are having challenges. They're not, they have been decimated in recent administrations. Some agencies are better equipped than others to spend money. The Forest Service, from what I've heard, is really lacking in contract staffing, like grants administration. And that money is just dribbling out. Other organizations are a little bit better equipped at the moment, but that's a big challenge. And from their perspective, they're trying to get high quality applications. So if you think, oh, there's just too much competition out there, maybe the answer is just call them up and give it a go. Accountability gaps, yes. So as a journalist, I'm trying to understand, how do we evaluate how this money is spent? And that's not an easy task when you're talking about this much money. But it's certainly, my go-to would normally be go to like the inspector generals, the GAO, and folks who have inside access and try to understand like the audits and evaluations that are happening of those government systems to try and understand whether they're working. Those accountability organizations also have been decimated in recent years. The resources are just not there, and there is nothing built into these laws to provide extra resources to keep track of how this money is spent. So that's, as taxpayers, that should concern us. It means that the evaluation is left to yahoos like me and you guys, anybody who knows what's going on, to try and figure out whether this money is spent well, how, what that means. So I just want to point out this story that we published just last week. This is a story about some of the obstacles for restorations. There's a huge dearth of native seeds, and we're going to need a lot of native seeds if we're going to do billions of dollars worth of restoration. This is a beautifully written story by H.R. Smith, and I hope you all will go and read it. It's a critical shortage, and there are lots of interesting solutions. Part of it is just that, nurseries don't get, there are organizations like Caltrans that know they're going to be planting stuff 5 years from now, but they don't actually place the order until 5 years from now. But the nurseries actually need to know what they need to grow because it takes time to collect it and grow it and stuff like that. So that's the thing. We're interested, if you guys know what's happening, we want to hear about it. I need to hear if you have shortages like that. We're going to have some time for questions in about 5 minutes. So I have just a few more things to say before we start that. One is that because we're trying to think of this as a service project, we want to be useful. There's at the Wild Billions project page, there is a story called How Do I Get My Hands on These Wild Billions? It is not perfect, but we've tried to kind of assemble tips from folks, and this is really oriented towards small local governments and small nonprofits and community-based organizations, whether or not they have 501c3 status. So we took that table of data of the congressional spending, the spending programs that Congress created, and I put it in a table and published it. So you can search it. It was they update it every now and then, but it's not a huge update. Now, the best way to go into that is just to kind of start searching through keywords for things that you're interested in, but there's a lot of stuff for restoration and watershed projects. There's a lot. When you look through it, just note that the eligibility is, it's different on every line. So this is a tip sheet. It's a place to get started. It's not an ultimate resource. What you do after you find something in here is you go to the agency and you try to find out what the details are, and you talk to the people at the agency. So it's at baynature.org/wildbillions. I really would like to get your tips. projects that you are working on that are getting funded, problems you are having and trying to get funding, ideas like what you want to know, please let me know. Yeah, that's it. Questions? Linda?
Yeah, you said the money has to be spent quickly. What does that mean?
Most
2
of the money
years?
needs
How
to be
many?
spent within 4 years.
4 years.
So 2026 is the usual, is most of it. Yes?
I was going to say that one thing that's been helpful for us to learn about this program is Nikki Roche from the San Francisco Bay
Yeah.
Venture has been having funding workshops once a month.
Yes, the funding, I'll just repeat that. The joint venture has been having these funding workshops once a month. And she's actually part of that story we wrote on the how do you get your hands on, there's a link in there
And all
as well.
of the sessions, I think, are recorded, and I think you can go back to past sessions to review what they've already gone through.
Sessions are recorded. Yeah, that's really great. Thank you for mentioning that. Heather?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much, Kate, for bringing all your research and investigation skills to this. That's amazing that you're providing this incredible resource for all of us. To follow up on what Alex said about the San Francisco Bay Joint Venture, monthly workshops, and they have a database. It looks somewhat similar to yours. There's probably a lot of overlap of funding opportunities that are
Yes.
specifically focused on water projects.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to share that. There's also, as I'm sure you know, a grants.gov website.
Mhm.
It's really hard to navigate. So again,
Yep.
very valuable what you're doing
Yeah.
to try to make this more accessible. I would just say, as a comment, we're a small.
Tell me where you're from.
Oh, Friends of Pleasant Hill Creek.
Thank you.
So we're right here. Welcome to our watershed.
This is our
Our creek, Community Creek. So, one of the things, we definitely face a capacity crunch because we're all volunteer. So, it's going for these grants is a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
In a prior life professionally, I was a grant writer.
Mm-hmm.
And federal grants are just a nightmare. So one of the comments we offered to that working group was, could some of the larger organizations, like the agencies, help provide the capacity for like coalition grants,
Mhm.
multi-party grants?
Yep.
Because then the small community organizations, there's no way we would have the capacity to take the lead on a federal grant.
Right.
Impossible.
Right.
So, but if an RCD or the county takes the lead,
Yep.
we can provide data to a community support, ideas, letters of support, because we get asked a lot for, like we were recently contacted by the county that's applying for money, here in Contra Costa, for shoreline resilience planning.
Mm-hmm.
And they reached out to us and said, we'd like to, would you write us a support letter? So that's a really nice tangible thing that we can do to help one of our local agencies bring resources to the county, to the community.
Yeah.
So I just put that out there as a tangible example of how the small organizations can potentially partner with the large organizations. and agencies.
We're seeing some agencies recognize that and provide specifically grants that are intended to be passed through.
Right.
So EPA has done a bit of that, and I think NOAA is doing some of that. I have not seen the Bureau of Reclamation do that yet. But they do give smaller grants, so, there's that. Yes?
I don't know anything about this, but it sounds like that there might be a real multiplier effect for philanthropic organization to
Yes.
put together exactly what everybody's talking about here.
Yeah.
Is anybody doing that? I mean, it sounds like one of the things they love with dollar could turn into 10.
I haven't seen anything yet, but if anybody knows of anything, please let me know. That's a good idea. Questions from this side of the room? Yes?
Back on the things that are being done now on that map you showed earlier.
Yeah,
There's a great big green circle.
great big green circle. Oh yeah, that's
That
probably the
is-
Presidio. We want to try and go
It was in the
back in
Forest
time.
Service. It was a Forest Service.
Oh yeah, hang on. Let me, well, okay, so
it was a big circle.
in the Northern California map, oh, so there's a big green dot for the Plumas,
Kind of in the central.
Plumas National Forest, Plumas Community Foundation. Oh, I know this data way too well.
It was on the Northern California map.
Yep, yep. That one is like 200 some million for Plumas, wildfire risk reduction and related stuff. All of that, the green dots are all, there's that Forest Service, and the Forest Service has a total of like $450 million just in Northern California. And I think I would say that's the agency I know the least, I understand the least well in terms of how it's spending money, because they're not that forthcoming. Any other questions?
Do you know when, like, if the money has to be spent by 2026, like, are these agencies still going to be distributing or accepting proposals through 2026? Or do you have a sense of, like, how long this window of when we can apply lasts?
Yeah, so all of the money is different. Every line in that database is different, is on a different schedule, and many of those lines get divvied up into multiple rounds of funding. So if, for some of the funding, like it's already gone out, but like, don't worry, there's going to be 3 more rounds of funding. And, some of it is just going to be, a lot of it is like distributed equally among the 4 years of funding so that people get a shot at it. Yeah.
Have you thought of partnering with SFA joint venture in terms of getting the word out? Because it seems like you both have unique skills. I mean, you're as a reporter, they're more about just making sure everyone's aware of the grants. So I think there's a good connection there.
We have a great overlap, and honestly, Nikki and the folks there have been amazing sources. There's a little bit, what we do is a little bit different in that, we're looking more broadly than just the coastline part of it, which they're real experts in. So when I was starting this project, they were kind of like the go-to sources on that part of it. But now, since we're also looking at like, how do we, what do we do with all the fallow lands in the Central Valley, and like, how do we actually thin some forests under 6,000 feet in the Sierras and stuff like that. So we kind of do like have a bit of a broader focus, but it's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, the point is that they're also connected to the Central Valley Board joint venture, et cetera, and the
Oh, yeah.
This joint venture is the same as yours.
Yeah, but they're basically the only people when I first started doing this who were also trying to figure out where the money was.
And how to
Yeah, and what you could do, and they do that matchmaking, as Heather mentioned. So if they can help you find larger organizations. Yes.
The Cal EPA Environmental Justice Action Grants funding, the application is not that bad, and the contact person was super nice and helpful, and they have a lot more grants coming out, so that's one to definitely check out. And
Not that bad sounds pretty great for EPA.
what did she say?
Yeah, can I just, it was the Environmental Justice Action Grants application process is, quote, not that bad.
And can you repeat the contact person for the SFA water quality improvement? I think you mentioned.
Louisa Valiella, yeah, 1 L. Well, 2 L's, but separate. I don't know if she's like the first point of contact, but she's the person who runs the program, so.
Okay.
Yeah, and she's like a very lovely person. Yes?
Thank you so much for offering this information. I'm curious if you guys, or if you know of anyone else who would lead like an actual Zoom session or thing where people are online looking at the resources, trying to figure out what to apply to or how to apply it to their organization, like a hand-holding through the process.
I think that joint venture funding session is what you're looking for, but for specific grants, there are like, the agencies are holding these webinars where you can talk to them. It's not, there usually is a Q&A period for potential applicants.
What's the joint venture? What's
The
that?
San Francisco Bay Joint Venture, yeah, just, you'll Google it. Yeah, there's another question in the back.
Oh, just a comment on the idea of it, some of these being not that bad. One of the things I've observed in the last few years is an increase in agencies offering a concept proposal phase before you have to write a full grant application. I think that started before the BIL and IRA, but it's made it, I think, a lot easier to sort of get in the game.
Like
Initially,
throw some
like-
ideas out in a
and
less
find out
formal
if your
way.
idea is viable.
Yeah.
If your proposal is viable, rather than just having to put everything into a full application.
What agencies have you seen doing that?
The California agencies that I work with, that I apply to, which is like CDFW.
State agent, like Coastal Conservancy, that sort of thing?
Maybe Wildlife Conservation Board. I think there were a few others that have been doing it for some years now, and I'm starting to see it now at the federal level, federal agencies.
Cool.
So it's so intimidating to write these grants, especially the federal ones. This has been a really,
Yeah.
I think, helpful trend. I don't know if there are downsides to it for anybody, but
Yeah.
in terms of equity or whatever, I hope it increases equity of access to grants.
Yeah,
They're called concept proposals or pre-applications.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
I'd just add to that, Delta Conservancy has a very friendly concept proposal. WCB and CDFWs are relatively new and they are friendly. And NOAA Fisheries just did one.
Yeah. Yeah. I think my main message for small organizations is just that, like, the agencies seem like really hard up for applications. They really need to spend money, and it's not easy for them to do so. So this is like a really good time to get in.
US Fish is another one that is, they're just like, please apply.
Yeah, I've heard that. Hello.
So, I was just commenting on the workforce development in terms of those friendly jobs.
Are you from Civic?
I am from Civic Corps. We have a wonderful feature in this article. So, just talking about just that shortage, like there's 14 local conservation corps in California, and just partnering with one of those for one of these type of grants. We're always looking for work and different partner opportunities, and something like this would be something that we would look forward to and builds capacity for us and for the state. So just putting that out there. There's a lot of us.
Thanks for mentioning that. Yeah.
What's the name of your organization?
We're Civic Corps, and we're writing that magazine that she has picked.
We just did, in this issue, anybody, I have a couple of recent issues here if anybody wants it, but.
Where are you based?
Yeah.
We're based out of West Oakland, but we just opened up shop in Pittsburgh. So we have a place in Contra Costa, but there's 4 local conservation corps in the Bay Area, San Francisco, North Bay, San Jose. We're always, as I said, looking for a partner, and we're big for workforce development. Like we're always constantly, adults, high school, and all that kind of things. But this kind of work is our bread and butter, what we want to do, what we want to train our young adults to do. So yeah, this is what we're all about.
Yes.
I just wanted to also bring up that there's been a lot of work in the recent past about best areas for conservation and planning. So CDFW has online, they have the areas of conservation emphasis, and they have a couple other resources where if you are in charge of land, you can actually look and see okay, this would be an area for restoration, this would be a priority, and then they also base their funding for grants on that location, on that GIS database. So so it's good to go in there and to look at what they have online as their priorities. So.
Yeah, that's wonderful. We also use the Conservation Lands Network data a lot for understanding the conservation values of different places, but I know that they are looking at adding a money layer, but they don't have that yet. That's an awesome point. Okay, we have just a few minutes left. Is anybody, okay.
Just quickly, for folks who are looking to do big projects, I guess I would really direct people to the San Francisco Bay Water Quality Improvement Fund, because they have
Me too.
they have NEPA covered for their projects. So that's something that in California, when we do our local projects, we don't really think about federal equivalency of CEQA. So when you apply for those funds, it doesn't change your permitting requirements whereas getting coastal resilience funding from NOAA changes some of your permitting things. If you're doing large, dirt and